Welcome to this Wednesday edition of Market Mantra, in which we give you a complete update on the economic, business and stock market news of the day. Well, I am Nishit Kumar and with me is my co-anchor in Hindi, Vishal Sharma.
नमस्कार, मार्केट मंत्र में आप सभी का स्वागत। प्रतिदिन की तरह कार्यक्रम में लाएंगे आप तक देश और दुनिया से आर्थिक, व्यापारिक और शेयर बाजार के ताजा समाचार। कार्यक्रम में आज इन सभी खबरों पर चर्चा भी होगी। चर्चा के लिए आज स्टूडियो में आमंत्रित हैं आर्थिक विशेषज्ञ डॉक्टर यामिनी अग्रवाल। डॉक्टर यामिनी, स्टूडियो में आपका स्वागत।
धन्यवाद।
सबसे पहले हेडलाइंस के साथ है निशित कुमार।
The headlines: domestic stocks declined more than 0.5%. Sensex closed near 53,500 points. Nifty settles below the 16,000 mark. The rupee weakens marginally to 79 rupees and 64 paise against the US dollar, and oil prices remain below the $100 per barrel mark.
घरेलू शेयर बाजारों में 0.5% से अधिक की गिरावट दर्ज। सेंसेक्स 53,500 के करीब, जबकि निफ्टी 16,000 के स्तर से नीचे हुए बंद। रुपया डॉलर के मुकाबले मामूली कमजोरी से $79.64 प्रति डॉलर के स्तर पर बंद हुआ और ब्रेंट कच्चे तेल की कीमतें $100 प्रति बैरल के नीचे रहीं। कार्यक्रम में सबसे पहले बात शेयर बाजार की। प्रमुख घरेलू शेयर सूचकांकों सेंसेक्स और निफ्टी में आज 0.5% से अधिक की गिरावट रही। वैश्विक शेयर बाजारों में कमजोरी के बीच दोनों सूचकांकों में यह गिरावट दर्ज की गई। सेंसेक्स 53,500 के करीब और निफ्टी 16,000 के स्तर के नीचे बंद हुए। बॉम्बे स्टॉक एक्सचेंज का सेंसेक्स 0.69% की गिरावट से 372 अंक कम होकर 53,514 पर बंद हुआ। नेशनल स्टॉक एक्सचेंज का निफ्टी भी 0.57% की मंदी से 92 अंक फिसलकर 15,967 पर आ गया। व्यापक बाजार की बात करें तो बीएसई मिड कैप सूचकांक 0.32% और स्मॉल कैप सूचकांक 0.04% की बढ़त में रहे।
The Sensex and the Nifty today declined more than 0.5%. Both the stock indices fell amid negative global markets. The Sensex closed near the 53,500 mark, while the Nifty finished below the 16,000 level. The Sensex declined 372 points or 0.69% to finish at 53,514. The Nifty also slipped 92 points or 0.57% to end at 15,967. And in the broader market, at the Bombay Stock Exchange, the mid-cap rose 0.32%, while the small-cap index ended 0.04% up. And in the Sensex pack, 16 companies posted gains, while 14 logged losses. Hindustan Unilever was the top gainer as it climbed 2%. Asian Paint added 1.7%, Kotak Bank rose 1.4%, and Sun Pharma ended 1.1% up. While on the other hand, IndusInd Bank tumbled 3.4%, Bharti Airtel declined 2.9%, HDFC plunged 2.6%, and HDFC Bank ended 1.7% down. And in the sectoral indices at the Bombay Stock Exchange, 7 sectors gained, while 12 witnessed losses. Healthcare climbed 1% and the FMCG sector gained 0.9%. Metal index rose 0.8%. On the other side, utilities and power indices declined 1.7% each. Oil and gas fell 1.4%. The overall breadth of the Bombay Stock Exchange trade was negative as shares of 1,612 companies gained while 1,705 fell, and shares of 146 companies remained unchanged. Well, Yamini, true to the trend that we have been witnessing over the past few sessions, today as well it was no very different. Yes, we know that the Fed is to come with its announcement very soon, and also the FIIs and the FPIs, which have pulled out in a humongous manner in the past few months, as we see. But yet, do you see any other factors which are really weighing so heavily on the markets that it's pulling it down rather than any other real factors which is affecting it?
The prime factor which is affecting the markets today is the pressure of inflation. and which emanates from the global phenomena, which is primarily the crude oil prices and the Ukraine and Russian war, which is causing much of the supply chain bottlenecks, besides the COVID circumstances which have risen in China and have caused lockdowns in China. Because China is a global is a main member of the global supply chain, and any lockdowns there affects the global supply chains. Because of these factors, primarily, we do see that the inflation pressure continues to be there. What is further happening is that because the inflation is at an all-time high, even in US, where it was estimated at about 8.8%, it has now reported that the CPI is 9.1%, clearly indicates that the central banks have to take control over the inflation or tame inflation by bringing about monetary policy. So the Federal Reserve would be somewhere or the other taking a step of at least 75 basis point increase in their interest rates, which would also force many other central banks to also raise their interest rates. Now, we had already recovered from the COVID circumstances, and the economy still needed the monetary stimulus to continue on the recovery state and to further take the growth path for all economies.
True.
However, the Russian-Ukraine war and the crude oil prices increase has pushed it further back. So because of the supply chain bottlenecks which were persisting, the resolve of the conflict not taking place, and because of the crude oil prices, many economies are continuously facing inflation pressures. Though the commodity prices have softened a bit. And also in India primarily, the monsoons may play an important role. The normal monsoons will provide for a good output in the agriculture sector, which will put a lesser pressure on the food prices.
True.
But it is necessary that the crude oil prices remain at below 100 level to support the economic recovery and the growth. Though fiscal and monetary measures have already been taken. If we look at the monetary measures, there has been an increase in the interest rates to take out the liquidity, and also the fiscal support measures in terms of the reduction in the taxes of petroleum has been a support to the inflation, which has come down to 7.01%. It's likely to fall further down in the month of August as the commodity prices are softening.
जी डॉक्टर यामिनी, आपने जो शेयर बाजारों पर जो दबाव है या जो शेयर बाजारों में जो गिरावट देखी जा रही है उसके कई कारण गिनाए। उसमें आपने क्रूड ऑयल के कच्चे तेल की कीमतों का भी एक बार जिक्र किया, उल्लेख किया, लेकिन हम अभी पिछले 3 महीने में देखें तो 20% घटे हैं कच्चे तेल की कीमतें। तो ये जो कच्चे तेल की कीमतों में जो कमी आ रही है, ये इससे मार्केट सेंटिमेंट्स पे क्यों इसका एक पॉजिटिव असर नहीं दिखाई दे रहा है?
जी देखिए, क्योंकि माना जा रहा है कि जैसे जैसे सेंट्रल बैंक्स अपने इंटरेस्ट रेट्स बढ़ा रहे हैं, खासतौर पे फेड जैसे इंटरेस्ट रेट बढ़ाएगा, वैसे वैसे यूएस इकोनॉमी रिसेशन में आ सकती है। वो पहले ही इससे पहले क्वार्टर में ऑलरेडी रिसेशनरी स्टेट दिखा चुकी है। अगर सेकंड क्वार्टर में भी रिसेशनरी स्टेट दिखाती है तो टेक्निकली वो रिसेशन में आ जाएगी। और क्योंकि बाकी सारे सेंट्रल बैंक्स उसको फॉलो कर रहे हैं, बाकी सारी बैंक्स और वर्ल्ड मार्केट्स में भी इन्फ्लेशन की गति बढ़ती जा रही है और जो ग्रोथ रेट है वो कम होता जा रहा है, जिसकी वजह से जो स्टैगफ्लेशन है उसके फियर्स कंटिन्यूअसली बढ़ते जा रहे हैं और माना जा रहा है कि जिसकी वजह से एक ग्लोबल क्राइसिस हो सकता है, जिसका इफेक्ट हमें अपनी स्टॉक मार्केट्स पे भी नजर आ रहा है। एफआईआईज का जो मूवमेंट है, जो आउटफ्लोज रहा है, उसका सीधा असर हमें अपनी स्टॉक मार्केट पे भी नजर आ रहा है। पर क्योंकि इंडिया फिर भी एक ब्राइट स्पॉट रहता है अपने नेबरिंग कंट्रीज के मुकाबले, जहां पे हम देख रहे हैं कि श्रीलंका में काफी मुश्किल हालात है, पाकिस्तान में मुश्किल हालात है और चाइना में एक स्लो डाउन है, इंडिया फिर भी एक काफी हद तक इन्वेस्टेबल पोजीशन रहती है। और इंडिया का जो सपोर्ट करता है वो उसकी डोमेस्टिक इकोनॉमी है, जिसमें कंजम्पशन का बहुत बड़ा रोल है।
Well, Yamini, we were talking about inflation and the rate hikes by the Fed and also the RBI. This might sound a very unpopular opinion, kind of, but let me bring this up. Do you feel that by whatever basis points it was raised, and consequently you are trying to tame the inflation, but at the same time you also need to have one eye on the growth and also the sustenance of the economy, right? So do you feel there could have been a more balanced sort of when it comes to, hiking the rates, and also to see that the economy runs on that smooth path? What's the take on that?
Well, I think the RBI is moving on a very tight rope.
Yeah.
So where it needs to tame the inflation, it also needs to support the economic recoveries. True. And the possible growth, which is being posted beyond 7% for the next year. So when we find that the RBI is trying to manage the interest rates, it is not following the Fed immediately, or it is not following the other central banks immediately. When the Fed raised the interest rates, the RBI still continued to maintain the accommodative stance, and it was at a much later stage when the CPI inflation was very high and the WPI touched a double digit of 15% and above, that the RBI came out with the increase in the interest rates, because the inflation was going beyond the limits which it had already set, and there had to be a certain level at which the inflation had to be brought about, for which the increase in the interest rates was due. Despite the fact that the FIIs have been continuously having an outflow because of the interest rate differential between US and India, the RBI has still not raised the interest rates to ensure that there is no outflow or there is a further inflow. Though there is positive investment environment as well as policy environment to gather momentum in terms of foreign investments in India. At the same time, the RBI trying to protect the rupee in terms of depreciation has opened rupee exchanges for trade, which is an important indicator that it is concerned about the fall of the rupee also, because that also imports inflation.
True.
And thereby taking care and ensuring that different measures at different points, not only one which is interest rate, but also simultaneous measures are taken from time to time to ensure that either inflation or the economic growth is balanced in a manner that does not affect the economy adversely.
जी, और अब रुक करते हैं रुपए के प्रदर्शन पर। घरेलू मुद्रा रुपए की बात करें तो अंतरबैंक विदेशी मुद्रा बाजार में डॉलर के मुकाबले आज रुपया 3 पैसे की मामूली गिरावट के साथ 79 रुपए 64 पैसे प्रति डॉलर के स्तर पर बंद हुआ। विश्व की 6 प्रमुख मुद्राओं की तुलना में डॉलर की मजबूती दर्शाने वाला डॉलर इंडेक्स अंतर्दिवसीय कारोबार में 0.15% की गिरावट से 107.91 पर था।
Vilyamini, the rupee continues to fall, though not very substantially, but still we are nearly hitting 80 now. So of course it's a matter of concern, but when we really put the rupee in conjunction with other currencies of the developing economies and mostly of the Asian economies, we see that we are not doing that bad. And actually this fall, whatever we are witnessing, is not that bad, which generally is perceived. So what's your take on that?
In the overall context, when we look at the other emerging economies and we see the performance of rupee, we will see the performance of rupee is better than many other economies.
Yeah.
Also, what is needed to understand is to ensure that the balance of payment is in equilibrium. It is necessary that the rupee finds its own value through the exchange rate, and thereby it ensures that in the long term or even in the short term, you do not have disequilibriums because of the exchange rate. And thereby it takes care of the outflows and the inflows simultaneously while it keeps in check the exchange rate. So I believe whatever fall is happening is primarily attributed to the outflows that are happening and the interest rate differential that continues to be there. What keeps India positive is its macroeconomic indicators, whether it is talking about its growth rate, whether it is talking about its high frequency indicators, whether it's talking about its GST collections, or any other parameters in terms of policy reforms. So since it's on a continuous policy reform where the government is also investing heavily in infrastructure and also bringing about reforms like digitalization, financial inclusion, and bringing about social infrastructural development that is strengthening the economy, that goes in the positive light for any foreign investors to come into India. Also, since the reform process is continuous and there are no breaks and there is stability in the political corridors, establishment, it does ensure the foreign investors that this is a safer place to invest.
They inspire confidence, indeed. Well, it's time to slip into a quick commercial break, but do stay tuned in because we have lots coming up on the other side.
उपभोक्ताओं तक पहुंचने का सुलभ और सस्ता माध्यम है आकाशवाणी।
आकाशवाणी के विभिन्न केंद्रों से कीजिए अपने उत्पादों और सेवाओं का प्रचार विज्ञापनों के माध्यम से।
लोकल और राष्ट्रीय स्तर पर कीजिए अपने बिजनेस का विस्तार, क्योंकि आकाशवाणी में विज्ञापन बुकिंग हुई बहुत ही आसान।
अब घर, दफ्तर या दुकान पर बैठे बैठे आप कर सकते हैं विज्ञापनों की बुकिंग।
डायल कीजिए 870-001-4242।
नंबर एक बार फिर नोट करें, 870-001-4242।
ब्रेक के बाद कार्यक्रम में आपका फिर स्वागत है। वित्त मंत्री निर्मला सीतारामन ने कहा है कि हाल ही में जारी संयुक्त राष्ट्र विकास कार्यक्रम UNDP की रिपोर्ट से पता चलता है कि भारत में गरीबी पर मुद्रास्फीति का बहुत कम असर होगा। वित्त मंत्री ने ट्विटर पर UNDP रिपोर्ट का हवाला देते हुए कहा है कि चिन्हित आबादी के खातों में नकद राशि हस्तांतरित करने से मूल्य वृद्धि से निपटने में मदद मिली है। उन्होंने कहा कि रिपोर्ट विकासशील देशों में जीवन यापन का संकट ये दर्शाती है कि भारत में कोई भी व्यक्ति $1.9 प्रतिदिन के गरीबी रेखा के पैमाने से नीचे नहीं जाएगा। रिपोर्ट में कहा गया है कि खाद्य पदार्थों और ईंधन की कीमतों में बढ़ोतरी से पूरे विश्व में लगभग 7 करोड़ 10 लाख लोग गरीब हो जाएंगे। रिपोर्ट के अनुसार लक्षित और समयबद्ध तरीके से नकद हस्तांतरण से इसके असर से प्रभावी ढंग से निपटा जा सकता है। डॉक्टर यामिनी, वित्त मंत्री का ये कहना कि जो मुद्रास्फीति का असर है गरीबों पर भारत में कम पड़ेगा, क्योंकि हमारे यहाँ जो DBT की जो स्कीम है, नकद हस्तांतरण जो खातों में सीधे पैसा पहुंचाया जाता है सरकारी योजनाओं का, ये वाकई में एक आपको लगता है कि एक इससे गरीबों पर असर कम पड़ेगा?
जी देखिए, जो सामाजिक सुरक्षा की बुनियादें हैं जैसे DBT है, आपके फाइनेंशियल इंक्लूजन के मेजर्स हैं, इन सभी से जो लोग गरीबी रेखा के आसपास हैं उनको एक सुरक्षा दी जाती है। ये कहना कि महंगाई का दर उन्हें असर नहीं करेगा या कम असर करेगा, ये शायद उतना जो नहीं है वो नहीं होगा, लेकिन ये है कि जो गरीब है उन्हें जो सरकार के द्वारा सपोर्ट दिया जा रहा है वो कायम रहेगा, जिससे उनकी जो हालत है वो बुरी नहीं होगी,
उनकी परेशानियां कम
रहेंगी और उनको जो है क्योंकि सही मात्रा में एक सपोर्ट मिलेगा और सरकार के द्वारा ये एक चयनित पैसा मिल जाता है तो वो अपनी जरूरतों को पूरा कर पाएंगे।
I believe besides the DBT scheme which the Honorable Finance Minister was talking about, I believe we have more kind of programs which can actually affect or which can actually support the poor, like we saw during the pandemic when food grains were kind of distributed for I think for 18 months or something like that, and almost 80 crore or something of the population they were given these free food grains for that period. So like that, there could be other systems, other mechanisms as well, which could ameliorate, I would say, a bit of the inflation and the effects of it on the poor.
True. Primarily, if we look at the way the government has been supporting the vulnerable groups and the poor groups, right from the COVID time, through the Atmanirbhar Abhiyan 1, 2 and 3, also through the fiscal supports it has been offering through its continuous social development schemes, is a support which is being made available to people. Today, taking an overdraft facility on a Jan Dhan account, or getting a credit on your Rupaya card,
Mudra Yojana,
or the Mudra Yojana. So especially for the MSMEs, women and the farmers, there have been beneficial schemes that have been brought about. An important scheme for the farmers, which is crop insurance, is itself a support system for the farmers in any adversity.
Indeed.
Similarly, the DBT, which used to a lot of times, the middlemen used to take away the money, now gets the transfer directly to them, is a beneficial scheme. Similarly, for the senior citizens and for the women, the amount of cash transfers that were made during COVID and after that also by state governments or by the central governments has been somewhere or the other benefited the vulnerable groups and the poor groups.
True. DBT, in fact, it has plugged the leaks in a big way, and it's really a revolutionary, I would say, such a step which has literally transformed the sector, as in and also the vulnerable and the poor, as you say, as you rightly mentioned some time back, that when it was not that, as in the DBT was not there were loopholes in between, which kind of leaked the funds when kind of it trickled down from the top to the bottom.
रुक करते हैं वैश्विक शेयर बाजारों का। सबसे पहले एशियाई शेयर बाजार। एशियाई बाजारों में आज कारोबार मिला जुला रहा। जापान का निकेई और दक्षिण कोरिया का कोस्पी सूचकांक दोनों 0.5% की बढ़त में रहे। चीन के शंघाई कंपोजिट इंडेक्स में 0.1% की मामूली वृद्धि दर्ज हुई। वहीं दूसरी तरफ सिंगापुर का स्ट्रेट्स टाइम्स सूचकांक में 0.5% की गिरावट दर्ज की गई और हांगकांग का हैंगसेंग 0.2% के नुकसान में रहा। यूरोपीय शेयर बाजारों में आज गिरावट का रुख देखा गया। लंदन का FTSE 100 0.6% के नुकसान में रहा। जर्मनी का डेक्स 1% और फ्रांस का कैक 0.8% लुढ़क गए।
And moving on to the U.S. markets, the three major U.S. share markets ended down yesterday. The U.S. stocks indices fell as growing signs of recession kept buyers out of the equities market ahead of the inflation data. The Dow Jones Industrial Average Index fell 0.6% and the S&P 500 declined 0.9% and the Nasdaq Composite plunged 1%. Yamini, these reports, they are really worrying, as in they say that there are growing signs of recession which are coming up, as in we had kind of just come out of the pandemic. Things were kind of looking up, if not in a big way. Obviously, little bits of green shoots were quite visible here and there, and yet again, now this fear of recession, which is really bothering things. Do you see this sign or this report or whatever it is of the recession, which is actually keeping buyers like us as well out of the market? Is it a sign of some concern? And is the recession for real? And if it is, do you see this continuing?
Well, the concern for recession is quite real, primarily because it does indicate a slowing down in the economy, and a continuous inflation pressure also puts the economy into the stagflation state. And the fears for stagflation are much founded in the way the quarterly results have been given by the US, which does indicate that there was negative growth. And where we look at the effects of the pandemic, that at that point of time itself, many people recognized that we were pushed many years behind in terms of our growth, as well as in terms of our development, primarily because of this pandemic. And it was after the vaccination came in, that people started going back to their work and the recovery started. And before we reached the pre-COVID levels, the concerns for inflation began to rank. And which further were escalated primarily because of the Ukraine and the Russian crisis and the continuous rise in the crude oil prices, which further made central banks raise their interest rates, not letting the economies recover completely fully, pushing them further to a downward swing rather than an upward swing. So the concerns are very real. But it will all depend upon how the stimulus is managed and how the qualitative measures, which are many in fold, may be taken to give the stimulus to the economy. Especially the fiscal measures will play an important role. The way investments take place in the economy by the government, the way transfers are made by the government, and the way social protection is offered by the government for the people will play an important role how the economy deals with the recession.
Well, all these talks kind of has an element of the pall of gloom, if we may say, but what is your advice for our listeners and also for the investors that what do they need to do in the let's say in the near future, let's say in a month, 15 days time, or 2 months or 3 months time? Do they need to sit on the cash? Do they need to invest? Do they need to be being there invested in the market, or what?
Well, it's important to be cautious and in control of your portfolios. It's important to continuously monitor your portfolios and not to take panic reactions. Again, what is important in the stock market is that one retains long-term investments, the ones that can give results in the long term, and invest in stocks which are fundamentally strong with their businesses and the growth in their industry, as well as which are supported by the economic overall position. So this is an EIC, which we say economic, industry and company specific analysis will play the key role in retaining these stocks rather than selling them through the technical indicators, because technical indicators would indicate that one sells at times for supporting their existing profits. But maybe the fundamental would say that you stay invested long, wait for the markets to recover.
So caution is the key word here.
और फंडामेंटल्स पे जाएं, टेक्निकल उस पे ना जाएं हम जी. तो अब रुक करते हैं क्रूड ऑयल का.
Towards oil now. So global oil prices today edged up but remain below the $100 per barrel mark, and gains were limited by a U.S. supply report showing rising inventories and caution ahead of the U.S. inflation data. Brent crude was trading at $99.90 per barrel, while the WTI crude prices were at $96.20 per barrel.
और मल्टी कमोडिटी एक्सचेंज में अगस्त के वायदा कारोबार में सोना आज 40 रुपए की बढ़त से 50,500 रुपए प्रति 10 ग्राम पर कारोबार कर रहा था. जुलाई अनुबंध वाली चांदी 15 रुपए की मामूली बढ़त से 56,480 रुपए प्रति किलो पर कारोबार कर रही थी. उधर न्यूयॉर्क मर्केंटाइल एक्सचेंज में अंतर्दिवसीय कारोबार में सोना मामूली बढ़त के साथ $1,726.10 प्रति औंस पर था. चांदी गिरावट के साथ $18.90 प्रति औंस पर चल रही थी. तो सोने की कीमतों की बात करें डॉक्टर यामिनी, बहुत संक्षेप में जानना चाहेंगे कि महंगाई बढ़ रही है लेकिन सोना उसी एक सीमित दायरे में कारोबार करता दिखाई पड़ रहा है. 50 से क्या
सोना ही रह रहा है.
जी, सोना एक सेफ इन्वेस्टमेंट मानी जाती है और महंगाई जब बढ़ती है तब माना जाता है सोना और रियल एस्टेट बढ़ते हैं.
जी, डॉक्टर यामिनी, कार्यक्रम में शामिल होने और श्रोताओं को बहुमूल्य जानकारी देने के लिए आपका धन्यवाद.
धन्यवाद.
And before we close, reminder of the headlines once again. Domestic stocks declined more than 0.5%. Sensex closed near 53,500 points. Nifty settles below the 16,000 mark. The rupee weakens marginally to 79 rupees and 64 paise against the US dollar. And all prices remain below the $100 per barrel mark. Well, that's it in this edition of Market Mantra. From the entire team here, it's goodbye till we meet again the next time. Market